Welcome back, trainers. You're with PewterCityJim, and we've got a few more additions to our Solah region Pokedex today. For those who are new, welcome! Solah is this channel's ongoing quest to be the best, like no one ever was. Or at the very least to fill out a fictional Fakedex for a fan region based on Southern California and a couple of the surrounding areas. We've got some amazing places and some awesome wildlife here, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of it with you guys. On this channel, we do a lot of Let's Play stuff, mostly centered around Pokemon, but this year we've moved on to doing a lot more art-related content, primarily Fakemon. The Solah region, I already mentioned, but you can also check out Bootleg Boutique. That's where I take crazy bootleg Pokemon merch and turn it into Fakemon designs. I also post process videos for things like art challenges and contest entries. If any of that sounds like fun to you, I'd love it if you could use a rare candy on the like button to level it up. Attach a thick club to the subscribe button for a higher chance of ringing the bell next time we send it out into battle. And if you could use roar down in the comments to scare away your enemies, that would be great. Remember, trainer, you are welcome here. So this time we're looking at a couple of things that we don't have a lot of. The single stage Pokemon, so far our only ones are Tatsugiri and Vigaloom, and a ground type finally. In the region that's mostly desert, we have no ground types currently. Look, in my defense, I imagine that there are actual canon Pokemon here too, so, you know, your Sandshrews, your Drillburs, your Nincada are here, and I don't think they need any regional variant or convergent treatment. But in terms of Solarian originals, no ground types yet. We'll get to that in the latter half of the video, but first, let's talk monkeys. Most generations have a monkey or ape Pokemon. Mankey, Apom, Meditite. I mean, I think it looks like a monkey, but I think it's mostly in the ears. Chimchar, this is. We skip Generation 6 because Kalos has exactly 7 new Pokemon. Alola gives us 2 in Oranguru and Passimian, which is a lemur, and they are primates, so I'm counting it. Grookey, and Generation 9 gave us Grafaiai. It's not quite a pattern. We don't get a clear one every single generation, but I'm definitely doing one for Solah. There are no current monkey or ape species native to North America unless you believe in Bigfoot. While I think that there are places monkeys could survive and make wild colonies, Florida and other tropical swampy places come to mind, they just never did. Even during the Great American Interchange, where North and South America were joined by a land bridge, releasing all kinds of crazy wildlife into one giant North versus South cage match. But that doesn't mean that Solah can't have a simian all of its own. Last time I checked, pandas don't come from France, koalas don't come from Hawaii, and there are no wild zebra in New York, though there is a herd of wild zebra in California. We will get to that eventually. And in the 1800s, monkeys were actually a relatively common import into San Francisco as exotic pets, almost exclusively South American monkeys. And the one that we're concentrating on today is the howler monkey. So, let's go on a little field trip to a spot more conducive to primate research. Not quite the rainforest environment you might expect, but I think it's going to work for our purposes. So, this Fakemon was initially planned to be my submission into an art challenge. It was a prompt challenge where the prompt were some seemingly random words: harsh, cries, situation, and hearing. This challenge was changed a little after I'd finished this design though, and I still liked the design enough that I decided to keep it. The prompt made me think of a couple of different things, but I'd been wanting a monkey for Solah for a while, and this one worked out pretty well, I think. So it's a dark and steel type monkey. Harsh, cries, and hearing all seem to tie in well with a Pokemon whose primary shtick is sound. Howler monkeys were some of those imported into Southern California in the 1850s, and they are massively loud. The loudest animal in the New World, in fact. With a cry that can reach 140 decibels, that's hugely loud. To put it in context for you, that's literally as loud as being at a concert. They have these giant throat pouches that they can use to pound out sound, so I took that round shape and converted it into a massive speaker. I also gave it a bit of a mullet and a color scheme that looks like denim and leather. Some spikes and studs, implied zippers around the wrists. Think 80s hair metal band aesthetic. Los Angeles was definitely a big hotspot for metal bands back in the day. Looks a little like Lucaria though, huh? Not quite Convergent Evolution, but it's got similar colors, steel spikes. Shame its typing makes Lucario extremely effective against it. Anyway, the prompt. The cries this Pokemon emit are harsh. Simple enough. Hearing? Well, while it generates massive sound as it attacks, it wants to protect its own hearing, which is our situation. I took situation to mean like, I don't know, a little story or a predicament that needs solving, some kind of narrative. The noises it makes are so loud it needs to protect its own hearing, which it does by jamming the sound dampening wool in its ears. That's all. That's our situation. The wool is attached to the tail, because howler monkeys have these big, strong-looking tails. And here we have Howloud, the metal Pokemon. Howloud love nothing more than screaming at their opponents full force. They can do this only because of sound dampening fluff on their tails, which they jam into their ears. They come from a region far away, but have made the forests of Solah their new home. Here are your base stats and moves. It's got some decent speed and special attack, and its defense isn't awful either. That, of course, comes from its steel typing. In terms of moves, it's mostly sound-based stuff. Solah already has a couple of Pokemon that focus on sound-based moves, so this is nothing new for the region, but I did give it a few other weapons too. Some punching attacks, and general steel and dark-type stuff. I feel like this guy would love being in the band from the Ender Sword and Shield, but it's too obnoxious and loud. Like, even Obstagoon and Team Yell are like, nah, we're alright, mate. How about you just enjoy a show from the stands, yeah? There's a good lad. Anyway, let's go ahead and check out Pokemon number 2. And here we find ourselves in the desert. Here, we finally get into the ground types of Solah. The nitty-gritty, grit-based physical wall types. The Dirt Lords, the Sand Kings. From dust to gravel, these earth-bending bruisers will shock and amaze with their mastery over all things that will stain your khakis if you trip over in the desert. So anyway, California's state marine mammal is the gray whale. It's a large baleen whale, meaning that it eats krill and other tiny aquatic creatures by straining them out of the seawater using huge hard hairs that line their mouth instead of teeth. Weirdly enough, Wailord is also based on a baleen whale, and they gave it teeth. So, you know, that was a choice that was made. Anyway, that's right, we're making sand whales. There's nothing really unusual, I guess, about taking aquatic animals and making them swim through stuff that isn't water. From the sandworms of Dune to Scrooge McDuck, it's not exactly an uncommon idea, but it's fun all the same. This concept sprung into my mind when I was researching fossils, actually. In the San Joaquin Valley, there's a massive number of small fossil shells that can be found in the sand. If you find that kind of stuff interesting like I do, there will be a link in the description. I was immediately inspired by the idea of a creature moving through the sand, filtering these shells out as food. The idea of a baleen whale doing this seemed perfect, and I'd wanted to make a gray whale Pokemon for a while too, so, you know, it all tied together pretty neatly. I didn't color it gray though. I went with muted earth tones, leaning towards light yellows. I wanted to make sure that that sense of scale was accurate. It's not as big as Wailord, but it's certainly larger than your average Pokemon. It's also got some pretty sweet armor that it makes by eating the shells it finds in the desert sands and secreting the refined calcium, which then hardens in the desert heat. I went all in on the baleen aspect, ensuring that it was clear that it's a hairy material. It almost looks like a big bushy mustache, huh? I made an almost aquatic looking pattern on the underside of the body, the fins and the fluke, but it's still colored with those sandy tones. I wanted to insinuate that while it's a dry land dweller, this is a being descended from aquatic creatures. It would share an ancestor with Wailmer and Wailord, maybe something like Hippopotas. Cetaceans are descended from land-dwelling ungulates that looked kind of like a mishmash of dogs, hippos, and small horses. It's pretty crazy. I tried to do the shading using the blue from Wailmer to further enhance this aquatic theming, but it just looked kind of weird, so I sort of altered the hue to be more purple. And here we have Clayleen, the dune Pokemon. Clayleen swim through the sand of Solah's deserts, filtering small shells from the earth, which are its main food source. It has a heavily armored hide, which prevents it from having many natural predators. Here are your stats and moves. This is a big, bulky, and very powerful Pokemon that would be hard to find, hard to catch, and it would take a while to train it. I think it would be worth it, though. It gets all the usual busted ground-type moves as it goes up to levels, with a few surprising additions that do hint at an aquatic ancestry somewhat. It also has one new move in Sand Spout. This is, it's essentially just Water Spout, but a ground-type version of it. Water Spout is such an iconic whale move that it would make little sense for a sandy boy like Clayleen, so we're just gonna retool it here. In terms of abilities, Howloud has soundproof, of course. It literally has sound-dampening material jammed in its ears. How could it not have this ability? The hidden ability is Heavy Metal. This doubles Howloud's weight, which allows it to use moves like Heavy Slam more effectively. Clayleen has Shell Armor. This protects it against critical hits. Sandstream, which activates the weather condition Sandstorm when this Pokemon enters battle. Pretty standard stuff. But for the hidden ability, we have Swift Swim. This boosts the Pokemon's speed in rain, and it does have the ability to learn Rain Dance. Here are your shinies. Clayleen gets a very desaturated gray look as an homage to its animal inspiration. Howloud's blue denim becomes a sporty red. And here are your eggs. So, where would you find these guys? Howloud goes in the northern forests, and it would be especially common in the woods of the wild area. Clayleen lives out in the eastern deserts, also in the wild area. You'd find it in places where there's almost nothing else around, and as I said earlier, it would be a pretty rare encounter and a pretty low catch rate. Stock up on Ultra Balls and have something on your team with Sweet Sand, I guess. And that's all I got for you, trainers. Next month is the official start of spooky season. How about another ghost? Or maybe something even more terrifying. You'll just have to check it out. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm very much looking forward to catching you in the next one, but till then, take care. Bye!